Town of Washington Historical Society meeting on February 19th, 1998, and Tony and Peter Wing are giving a talk and a presentation on collectibles.
Mine oddball. Every so often, because you're looking at the ground. That's same it is. Poke on the rope. Started to be right in fashion 20,000 years ago.
What's it for?
Makes you look better.
How it works!
Like my sternum.
I thought it was so far over.
If you study photographs, paintings of your Revolutionary War heroes, Washington and all that, they wore a similar little metal thing in here to protect both the guy in this area, a little piece of sternum. Because if you got hit here with one of these things, I imagine if I it also like the market feminine things, and this is some of it. No. I collect militarium. My son is over here. He also collects some of these helmets. Some of these are his, but we won't put them all together tonight. And I'll go through some of this stuff here. I don't know how much time. What time we got? How much time have I got? What do you want to know?
As much as you want.
All right. I'll go through the transition to helmets after a bit. And Scott says, "Oh, you got to bring down some of your collections." Well, you know, got to bring down. What can I throw in a bag that's not going to get broken? Well, these were designed to have grenades go off 2 feet above them and crashing helicopters and everything, so they survived. And I thought easy enough to throw these in bags. Kind of hard to throw other collections in a bag and drag them down here. If you want to see the collections, they're at the house. They're all over the place. I don't know how you see them, because when I got done bagging all of these, I looked around the living room and I didn't see where I made a dent in the helmet. So what I'm trying to say is it's hard to get ahead in the helmet. Good one. I collect this stuff. I don't know. I got one for the tag. This is how it happens. I got one from the tag sale, $2. One was good. Some on and overdone. I used to throw the stuff away. And one of my biggest heartbreaks now is nothing on overdone you can touch. It all goes down a chute or it gets crushed. And I sit there and I pull my hair out because I hate to tell you what's probably getting crushed and, you know, just disappearing forever. Old photographs, probably, God knows what. At least we used to be able to look through stuff and try and save some stuff. And I made a lot of money 1 month off the dump in 1968 because of what people threw away. Unbelievable. I'm sure they're still throwing it away. It just is you cannot see it with your hands on it. So it's gone forever now, whatever they're throwing away. So I collected military in this stuff. I got into it more and more and more because the men and the little boys that come to a castle like to see this martial appearance of things. Military stuff is a man's thing. But then it leads you to start reading. You get involved in history. You get involved in everything. And then the next thing I know is I found a cannon barrel in a barn, restored it, built a carriage to old military blueprints, joined the organization, the American Antique Artillery Association, and now we shoot cannons in competitions against other antique cannon crews. This is kind of, I know, esoteric, but it's not really. It's preservation of historical firearms, and artillery is derived from Latin. It is an art form. It's the art of throwing something in the art. They got the artist always to throw something. If you read about Michelangelo, he designed war machines, and he knew how to make siege engines, and he made army tanks. He made all kinds of things that you don't read about. So did Michelangelo, and so did this other fellow, and I can't think of his name, but he was really crazy, but he was a crazy artist, and you used to get him to make these war machines, and he was an expert artillery guy. It's the art of throwing something in art, is all that means. So enough of that, when we do that, there's going to be a shoot locally in Da Vinci, and there was another one. can't think of his name. He ended up shooting the bishop's jewels and gold coins because they ran out of lead and ball and loot nails. And they shot the bishop's jewels and his gold coins. My kind of guy. So I would request the bishop to stand in front of the thing. There's going to be a shoot. The guys are asked to dress in uniforms and a demonstration shoot up in Pine Plains this spring, April the 24th, 25th, 26th, whatever that weekend is, the third weekend. And it's up to Pine Plains, left on 199, we head towards the parkway, and it's about 2 miles out to the right. It's a shooting range, and they confirmed that they want us to shoot there in the spring, if anyone's interested. So that's where that is. I'm going to go through these helmets now. The two uniforms, my wife picked this up at Range Clothes. So this is a Scots uniform. This helmet actually would go with that. That's a sergeant, Scots guard. They're Scotch regiments that fought for the Empire, and they guard the old Queen today. And you know what? I think the old Queen could use a little Scotch guard. Anyway. This is a more formal dress one, and the cut and the style is near, I haven't got the books on it, I can't, as near as we can figure about 1870, 80 on this. It could be up to 1920 though. That's in the 1885s, 1890s when the English Empire, the sun didn't set on it, and these poor guys were fighting everyone, and Custer's battlefield would pale by comparison of what these guys got stuck in. Believe me, you haven't read about it. Yeah. Anyway. Sometime a long time ago, Genghis Khan and his brother John invaded Central Europe, the Huns. They wore such helmets as these. These helmets were made the same for about 500 or 600 years. I believe this one would be about 1750, 1780. These are what the English Empire had to fight. These were actually last used as late as 1885. Documented to be used in the south of Egypt as late as 1849. These guys came out of the deserts. They were in this apparatus here. They had homemade flintlocks and things like that, and Saracen swords. So the spike, this was a nose guard. It's missing. In other words, the thing slid down and it protected your nose here. I stuck these little feathers in to get no, but that's what those little sockets are for points. Okay, and nail. So I have a couple of these. I have a suit of armor that took 20 years to put together out of pieces that this goes with. But I want to show you this because they always refer to the poor Germans as Huns. I think they all got a lot of mix of the Hun in them because my great-grandfather came from Germany in 1861. His name was Eisenhart, the Iron-Hearted. And his picture looks sort of Asian, and my daughter is definitely, it shows up in her. Skin and her eye.
Do you know if there's a reason why that points on the top?
It pointed towards Allah.
Took their heads and they charged.
However, this is a derivative now. This is World War I, what they call pickle hull. Now you see the spike. And I mean, yes, it was influenced by that, but that's really a chimney to let sweat out of the top of your head. That kind of this little hot thing. Now, I had 18 different ones of these. When my kids were little, they had to eat, so I sold them. And I have this one left, but I had 18 different ones. If you do any reading about the Prussian armies in the German states at that time, there was Baden and Saxony and Bavaria and on and on and on, and everyone had a different helmet, a different plate. There's 555 different Prussian helmets. That's why they lost the war. Everyone was back home making helmets. 555 different World War I Prussian helmets you could collect if you had a complete collection. When they found out this didn't stop a bullet, they developed this helmet. This is called Austrian tab. Everyone calls these Frankenstein lugs up here. No one knows what they're for, which is a lot of baloney. I know what they're for, and serious collectors know what they're for. On here was like a chin that went under here, and it could swing up and flip back. Then it would flip down. It left a slot here, so your chin was protected. So when you had this on, you look at a slot here, and this thing went down, and you had a metal chest plate. Machine gunners mostly had the plates. The first week they used them, they threw the chain guards away. The second week, the metal chest plates went away. Too cumbersome, in 6 feet of mud. The situation in the trenches was horrendous. If you read anything about it, I don't know how anyone survived that war. The mustard gas and all that, they threw it. So that's the Austrian pattern. That's about 1915, 1916, and 17. They were using these after they stopped with this business, this peacock business. Later on, now I collect these things. I don't care about the philosophies of the governments or situations involved. The Germans came up with this design. Now, what's that look like? Doesn't that look like our modern Kevlar helmet? Today, this is called an M35. This was developed, it's a better designed helmet. We just didn't want to adopt it right away because we had to let the psychology of World War II disappear before we started making things that made us look like stormtroopers. But this was one of the most superior designed helmets ever, right here. Just adopted, it's made out of Kevlar. This is the same toy. This one is called a Luftwaffe, a Luftschutzhelmet helmet. It was originally blue and had a decoration here. In other words, the guys that worked on the airport runways wore this one. You can see the similarities. And the dip here was for sound continuators on the ears. Their police wore this one. This one is Catalunya. And their police wore this unit. It's got little air vents here. This is a very kind of a rare World War II helmet that the police wore. So what I showed you here is an evolution of Germanic helmets from the attack of Genghis Khan and those boys. And really, if you read anything about it, there'd all be Mongolians there, except when a leader died in Mongolia, everyone that was important had to attend the meeting, like the Senate. So all the leaders had to leave to go to this voting, and the thing fell apart slowly. Otherwise, it all look like Mongols today. So it's kind of, so from the time of Genghis Khan up until in Germany here in 1945 or so. This is an American doughboy pattern helmet, World War I, but it was used up until 1942 or so. They're actually made up until 43, I believe. If you look at photos of Corregidor, you'll see the boys that got stuck there were wearing these helmets. The English also wore this same exact pattern, and they're very hard to differentiate from as pieces get missing off of them because they're all made with the same exact machine. I think the English, we made the machine, the English took it and they da-da-da-da-da. So they're both the same. But that's a helmet that the Americans wore from about 1910 until 1942-43. This is a little later development of the English war later in World War II, and that is called the turtle. For obvious reasons.
Excuse me, that last helmet, why is it so shallow? What was the design?
But the guys, most of them were from Arkansas. I have no idea.
We call them slopes.
We find presidents today.
You got it.
What's the plastic?
Was I supposed to be politically correct? This is, someone said George Patton. This is not his helmet. This was a colonel's. This is the Liner. This is went up inside the standard and you know what? Out of all the helmets I brought, I got 50 of these things. I didn't bring the regular helmet. But anyway, this gives you the shape and everything. This is kind of rare World War II thing. I can see the guy, like Colonel, standing there with his Eisenhower jacket on, screaming at someone with his shiny .45. This is pretty rare as far as an American piece of World War II stuff goes. Here's the same pattern helmet that these liners went up into. All right, you see the shape, except this one's got these funny little flaps on it. This is a very rare American helmet. World War II, aviation, American Air Corps. These flaps here, they're speakers. This is what your belly gunners, your tail gunners, your ball turret gunners, all the gunners on those planes wore these helmets. Very rare. They're now today And collectors end up giving names to things because to keep them so. This is referred to as a Memphis Belle gunner's helmet today in the collector's circle. This is a very rare helmet. I'm happy we got
Are
this
the
one.
speakers built in?
Huh?
Are the speakers actually built in?
No, they put it on their head and probably had a little cloth helmet that went under this. You understand at 30,000, 35,000 feet in the air. And they didn't have flight attendants. It's cold. They wore fleece skin, heavy leather jackets with fleece in them and boots with fleece. I had a set and I found out my lovely wife sold them at Stormville one day.
Pete, what are those made of? Those helmets? What's the material?
It's a pressed steel. It's stamped from one piece. And that's part of the problem. I read something about making these things. It's very hard to get the right metal and a machine that'll stamp that ball shape out in one shot. But they do. They come down about bang and they stamp this out. Today I assume it's probably easier, but technology around 1930, 35, it's very hard to get these shapes out. Probably, answering your question, probably why this thing was shallow in 1915. It just didn't have the machines that bang this deeper shape out. This is another American helmet, and this one is, I've been told, a motorcycle helmet. However, I believe it's also the same as what the paratroopers wore, making this another very rare American helmet from World War II. And I put this on because this was kind of funny. I collected this someplace along the line. This is a standard helmet camouflage strap, right, from Vietnam. But the funny thing is the guy's name inside was Flowers. Remember Flowers back then, the anti-war thing? But that's what they used to pinch camouflage on this strap. Leading to another American helmet. My son got this one someplace. That's a Navy gunner's helmet. And it has heavy padding here. I don't know if you're ever on a Navy ship, but one of those things can shake, rattle, and roll when they get going. And this wide sweeping here, it's a Navy ship, salt water. Keep the salt water washing down, not down your neck, but off the sides. And I don't know if you ever saw them, what they call the pom-pom guns, the guys hanging onto those things, shooting them, the heavy padding, just holding onto that gun, shooting it would shake the tooth out of your head. Leading up to another American helmet. This is Vietnam era, and this is like for inside a tank or a tracked vehicle or a tracked gun or something like that. It shows you the transition. This thing is fiberglass or something. It's not Kevlar. And it's for riding inside speakers, talk to your crew, and you plug it in. My son found this one, Vietnam era helicopter helmet. This business here in the Velcro, I left the tape because some guy, it's original to the helmet. It's now 30 years away, believe it or not, 32 years ago. And then on here you Velcroed another thing. That's so when your helicopter got hit, close up range, and the shot, that was for fire, the flash inside the helicopter, you might have stood a chance to get out with your face on it. So that's kind of rare, this helmet. It leads me up to these two. These are French, World War I. And just to show you, I brought two French helmets with two different, this is artillery, RF on it, Royal French, and this is an ordnance bomb, Royal French infantry artillery. It shows you how you can get collecting one helmet from one country and getting all the different variations of the plates, so it ends up, it just becomes endless. And I think this is a fine example of people going through a lot of designs to do the same exact thing, protect your head. These are called Adrians. General Adrian, the French commander in World War I, noticed 20 guys hurt in the trench except one guy didn't have a head injury. He asked him why not. The guy took off his hat, and he had taken his eating tray, banged it down, and had put it on his head, and put his hat over his eating tray. And Adrian saw that this was the one guy out of 20 didn't have a head injury. He started saying metal helmets again, got these stamped out real quick for the men. These are called Adrians. But the mother of the invention there was some poor guy scared to death, banged his own helmet out of the eating tray. Takes me back to these few. These are oddball but rare. This is 1927 Dutch. It's a guard plate, guard helmet. They guarded someone in Holland. The only other one I've ever seen, and how I know exactly what this is in West Point collection. 1927 Dutch guard. And this I found at Storm's at the cleaning. This is a Swiss helmet. World War I pattern, but they didn't change it for quite some time. The Swiss tried to stay out of wars, except they took 27 truckloads of gold. The last war. So, I was going to do a cartoon, but every time I submit a cartoon to this paper, they say I'm so politically incorrect. The Swiss banker going, I was just following audits. This is an Italian helmet. Everyone's laughing, got a big smile. This is an Italian, like for inside of a tank or a motorcycle. It's kind of in real neat condition, but if you look at the size of it, I couldn't cram that out of 3-year-old. It's a small size helmet that probably never got issued, and that's what that is. And this bumper business, I mean, you know, if you look at, that's for inside the tank. You get banged around that thing. It should help. Okay. My son trying this. This is another Swiss helmet, and this is kind of a neat one. It's a Swiss guard helmet. Again, it's got the plates. And finally, God bless Riga and back these poor people. This is a Russian helmet in the Cold War period. This one's in mint condition, brand new. You know why? Because when their government fell apart, these guys not getting paid, they started to sell everything. This is a brand new Russian helmet, never issued. So the Russian taxpayers, if there are such a thing, they paid heavily for it, never got used, and some tomboy sold it to me at a swap meet, very cheap. I was also offered once a helmet. It was a Russian tanking helmet, a modern one. It had this big gizmo on the front and his eyes, and it was a night vision telescope, night vision, state-of-the-art, modern helmet. It probably cost the Russian people, like our helmets cost, $40,000 or $50,000 for this thing, and the guy says, "You've been a good customer, you can have it for $300." Unbelievable. The military is falling apart. Reagan scared them to death. The Star Wars business, they tried to spend to keep up with us. The threat was there, and he outspent it. That's exactly what he did. So everyone can cuss him out. But he brought that big threat. He put a making mud hole, and we're going to be there for a long time. Now, has anyone got any questions? That's just helmets. I collect other things, not just tractors. I have a sword collection that goes back to, some of the swords go back to Charles I, and this came up down out of Saratoga. I believe it was probably at the Battle of Saratoga, even though the rapier is far older than that. You understand, back then they didn't throw stuff away. They took it back to the Tower of London. They captured the stuff. They reissued it. If you read anything about Gentleman Johnny, well, he was the only gentleman in the bunch, if there were gentlemen, because they hired these European cutthroat slugs to come ahead, and they burnt, with the Indians, they burnt every farm, raped the women, killed scalped Jane McRae, a curly red-headed girl who was actually engaged to one of Burgoyne's officers. They scalped her and brought it in for the prize money, and they're looking at these beautiful locks, and John Conn, the guy down, they recognized it as his fiance's hair. I mean, go figure. But anyway, I believe that sword might have been from the Battle of Saratoga in that time period. And it could have been from the French Indian Wars too, because they were fighting like crazy up there. That's what makes one of our living in this area. So the collection is so varied and great. Is that we were owned by the Dutch. First, we were owned by the Native Americans, instead of us here. Then the Dutch. The British took it, then the French wanted it, we fought with them, they sided with the Hurons, it's called French-Huron Indian War. Everyone wanted this area. We fought like ridiculous. The Germans came here, it's Little Berlin, they call places Rhinebeck. The Irish come here, it reminds them of home. Anyone that comes here, the Russians come here and they build houses up in the, above Hunter. If you go up in there, you see these wooden stave sort of houses and churches, and little Russia up there. I often tell people shooting movies, if they want a little piece of Russia in the background, just go up to Hunter and drive up to the back there and you'll start seeing it. So this whole area has just attracted so many variations of ethnic peoples and religious peoples and from different countries. There's so many different origins, and it's all come in here. So the stuff isn't around. So collections of anything in this area become quite easy. If you look for it, it's available. All right, enough. I don't know what else to speak about as a collector. If anybody has some questions, I'll try to answer them on anything.
Pete, when you find these stones and rocks, do you find fossils in them?
Oh, you know, I'm glad you brought that up. Well, part of when you pick these things up here, these small things, when you're bending over as a kid, occasionally a rock would be cracked open from a plow machine, a disc harrow or something, and there'd be a seashell in the middle. Yes, you'll find that. And recently, and I'm glad Judge Prisco mentioned this, recently, paying attention to rocks now is like second nature to me, first nature to me. But this summer, digging in a wall to get some stones for a footing I was doing, I flipped over this big rock. I flipped it over and got it on the loader, and backing up, timing is everything. The sun was setting way down low, so the shadows cut across it, and on the stone are 3 dinosaur footprints. I never would have seen them in a bazillion years except the sun was setting. Sideways, cut the shadow across them. You could see them distinctly. They have been identified as a Eurontes dinosaur. It was an early upright walking carnivore. Early, and what I mean by early, it's 150 million years ago this thing walked someplace on the East Coast corridor, probably up in Canada. You understand this was a gift of the glacier. Broke it free someplace, pushed it down, and we see that it left these big rocks here and there. We have rocks that are on our walls, are not indigenous to Dutchess County. They're indigenous to Hudson Bay or Maine or someplace, or even Alberta, the way the glacier pushed these things down. So that's what's another thing fascinating about stones. We're not looking at just the Hudson Valley. We're looking at an array of things here that are totally interesting to me. So, in theory, I guess some of the shells that I found in rocks could be older, but one of the oldest things I can say I found were these prints left by this creature 150 million years ago. If you want some idea how old that is, that rock was already 100 million years old when the Tyrannosaurus Rex was alive. So it was older than we are to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. That is pretty old. And I'm surprised anything's left. But I brought it down to the Merritt store here when we had the dinosaur head, that big Giganosaurus thing. And the kids were actually, I backed the truck up so the kids could actually get up and put their hands on it. This is not allowed in museums. And I think this is okay for kids to do, just to actually touch it. Yes, I'll take any questions if anyone has anything like that. Yes.
Now, just a question in terms of the Celtic connection you talked about earlier. Do you think that there was a land connection back in time?
No. There used to be, and it's written, it's historically known, that they would find Indians frozen in fishing boats in Ireland, and they'd find them, and they always thought they were devils and demons, and they, you put it with their religions and their beliefs at the time, and of course, they had to burn them or do something, and they probably had to cut someone's throat and burn them in a wicker man to get rid of the demon that just showed up. God knows what they did. If I forget if it was one of my kids or one of the kids in the class or my nephew, they had this school project. They threw plastic bottles with notes. Threw them in the Hudson River. Just threw them in there someplace. 2 years later, he gets a letter from Britain. You found your bottle with a note and your address. So if you throw a bottle by accident, it finds its way to Britain. If you throw something off the coast of the Azores or out the Pillars of Hercules between Gibraltar and Morocco, the Moroccan Mountains, that's the Pillars of Hercules. Out through there, you went to find Atlantis. Well, if you go adrift there, you'll end up in the Carolinas or where Columbus did. So, I mean, you have to understand, the Egyptians and the Phoenicians were moving rocks as big as this room to build stones. You don't think they couldn't sail a ship a few leagues and then find their way back? Anybody who's a mining expert will tell you all along the Esopus up in there, those mines, those holes dug into the Shawangat Range, they're not dug in a colonial fashion. No way at all. They're dug in a Stone Age, Bronze Age fashion. Those big holes going in. Bronze Age way of looking for material, not a colonial way. Any other questions? Anything?
This house across the street is my family home. So,
Around 1925, it became the Palace of Abden. The horticulturist that lived there, his car, the gardener's car. And then it became a tourist car in the 30s. And that's where this oil man got. This oil man, and his name is, he worked for Sinclair Oil. I think his name is Stuart Lewis. He bought the car, but then the Egyptians wouldn't let him ship it home. He said, it's a national treasure, it stays in this country, you can own it, but it stays here. So he started taking it apart, sneaking it out with oil parts. Typical, this is why we're loved throughout the world, you know, especially oil people. Then in 1957 or so, who was it, Nasser took over and told Farouk, you've got 5 minutes to get out of the country, we're going to kill you, and that's when he fled up the Nile in a speedboat with all his Playboy stuff. And he was about what? He'd been replacing it with weird stuff from other cars. So he got it over here, he got it all apart, and he was going to rebuild it, and he collected odds and ends and put them in barrels and boxes, sold it to this other guy. That's the way I got it. I got it in barrels and boxes.
oh no.
But what I didn't, it was the worst Chinese puzzle in the world, because what I didn't realize over the years, he bought spare parts and threw them in the bins. So you figure out where 2 of these things went, but where the hell these other 3 went? It wasn't because they were extra parts, you know. So finally what I did, I got it over to a friend's place. He had a friend that had another old Cadillac in dire and bad repair, but it was together, and we drug it in, and then everything made sense after that, except for a few pieces. You understand, it was in Egypt, these guys had to make do and they handmade weird parts to make things work, and sorted through it, we got it together, and now the car runs, and finally it's upholstered, and that was 14 years just putting a part in it, chains.
Now, I was in Hershey the year he bought it. He bought it. He brought it home and restored it. So, I saw it when it was not a good piece.
The funny thing was, when I was closing the deal, my wife was with me, and she wanted me in on this. She laid down. She's so tired. If you ever been there, you walk so long, you just get worn out. So she laid down and fell asleep. So I closed the deal. When she woke up, I said, "Hey, put it on the door." She says, "But." I said, "You want to sleep?" Any questions at all on anything? Yes, ma'am.
Can you give the story of the truck that you drive around? It looks like a truck that perhaps a farmer would have driven his produce into town with.
I used to have a truck like that,
Okay.
a Model T, some years ago.
Yeah.
It was a Model T Ford.
Okay.
Jimmy really has the truck that a farmer would use for produce. It's a high-wheeler international, and it was designed for farmers. The thinking was where these vehicles would go, they would be following many more wagons than cars or other things. So they made them high-wheeled, like wagon wheel style wheels on them, so they would follow the wagon ruts, and these thin wheels. And they're pretty rare vehicles. They're referred to today as high-wheelers. I'm sure when they were made, they weren't called high-wheelers. They were called a truck or a motor carriage or something, farm vehicle. But see, this is the way things get named by collectors to sort them from the rest. They're called high-wheelers today.
Actually, International was one of the later ones to build anything like that.
Still make the wooden.
Well, that is, what is it?
That's not a hunter-gatherer.
Try to sell them one.
That's the opposite of a hunter-gatherer.
Huh?
Creative, right?
Well, no, that has to be part of the. I feel everyone has a lot of creative ability and things to see something clearly, and that's part of the hunter-gatherer. I mean, I'm sure there were strains of people that went out and couldn't figure out what not to pick up. But there were some that could recognize the shapes, the things they knew were the shapes of stones that became quite easily rendered into a tool or something. I think that's part of it, is creativity things. I think everyone has a creativity. It's not recognized. I think what's destroying it a lot today is that a lot of people, they love their coats, they love the hand laced, the handmade clothing, they love, the people that someplace to be distracted at a restaurant, a movie theater, or a visit, or blah, blah, blah. And then at home, the TV, and now movies bring up movies and put it, because I can easily get sucked. Here's things like this dark, they're like, well, movie, okay. But I think a lot of our creativity is getting null and void because of that business. Haven't you gone down streets? When I was a kid, you went down the neighborhood street. The kids were all out the street. They're on bicycles, they're in gangs, they're either fighting or playing football. They're doing something, generally in the street, generally a pain in the neck. Today, you go down these little developments and streets and stuff, you don't see the kids out anymore. You do not see them out like you used to. They're inside with the basketball and the other things. Or maybe it's more organized. Maybe they get put in camp structures more. But I don't think it's the same. I think a lot of them tend to stay inside more.
Scholarship program. This is and Peter, with the little cards you passed out, you can have those. You can have those. You can have those. No, you can have.